This hand happened 3 years ago at MGM in Vegas. I was on vacation there, so it was not my home casino.
3 years ago. Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So I'm playing 1-2. We're 8-handed at the time,
Hmm.
and I'm in seat two, and the villain's seat eight, which becomes a little bit relevant later on in the hand of where we're sitting. I'm UTG plus one, and I have ace of clubs, nine of clubs, and I raise to 10.
Okay.
Cutoff calls, button calls, the villain in the small blind calls, and the big blind call.
So cutoff calls, button calls, both blinds call, and about how deep are you?
I'm 600 deep, and the villain in the small blind is 250.
Oh, so it's really short. Now, this is, I think, not necessarily about the hand, but just something that happens, right? From what I
Yeah.
remember, right? Okay, so the pot looks like it's $50, I would say, right? Something like
Yep.
that. Okay.
Flop comes nine of hearts, eight of spades, eight of clubs.
Okay, so you flop top pair.
Yep.
Yep.
Check, check to me. I bet 20, which is probably on the small side, but it
Okay.
is. It's probably not the main point of the hand. It goes fold, fold to the small blind,
Okay.
who calls,
Okay.
and then everyone else folds.
So your head's up now.
Yep.
So 988, you bet here. I mean, sometimes obviously this can, I mean, it's very, very multi-way, right? So you're up against four other hands. Someone could very, very easily have an eight in this spot, but I still like actually betting with a lot more volume in smaller stakes games, just because people normally aren't going to be playing off the board. They're playing off their own hand. But could I see checking here? Possibly sometimes. I mean, your hand needs a little bit of protection here too. I know that's not the main point, but all right. So pot's 90.
Turn is the three of diamonds,
Okay.
and small blind open jams for 220.
So now the small blind jams for 220. Okay.
So obviously, this is semi overbet and just kind of a weird spot. So the first hour, I had been at this table for about an hour. It was a lot of seemed like a lot of amateurs, obviously playing 1-2, and some people who were new to the game. This guy seems semi new to the game, but he also hadn't missed the action the entire time. So he had followed through with putting blinds out and things like that. So it seemed like he knew at least what was going on a little bit. So I started talking to him. I was confused by his shove, so I started asking questions like, why so much? What do you have? And just questions like that. He was responding back and forth, so we were engaging in some talk back and forth.
Okay.
And so one of the things I do at my home casino, obviously, is that I will show my hand. So being at the MGM, I did not know what the rule was, so I asked the dealer, can I show my cards? And
So-
the dealer...
So,
Oh, go ahead.
so the action's on you. You're facing this overbet on the turn, right? You're trying to figure out what to do, and you then ask the dealer. Go ahead.
Can I show my hand?
So nothing has happened. All you've done is just say, "It's all into you. Can I show
Yeah.
my hand?" Okay.
The dealer says yes, but that she wouldn't advise showing her hand if the action's not completed.
Okay. Now there are other rooms too that implement a rule. Normally in a cash game, this is not against the rules to show the hand. Now, obviously, we had that Helmuth controversy. Showing the hand sort of induced somebody possibly to expose their hand, but this guy's all in, right? There isn't really necessarily any more action. So, and then there are card rooms where they implement where if you show your hand in your spot, Steven, you sort of get a modified countdown. The bike used to do that. I don't know if it's in play where you only have 10 seconds. They'll call the floor and you only have 10 seconds to act or
Okay.
something like that. Okay, so what did the dealer say?
The dealer said, I wouldn't advise to, but yes, you can. So then I just wanted to clarify. I said, so my hand is still live if I show? And the dealer said yes.
Okay.
So I flip up ace nine.
Okay.
I flip it up right in front of me. It's still behind my chips.
Uh-huh.
And I then continue to my talk with the guy. I was like, is this any good? Do you really have an eight here? And which point he flips up his hand, ace eight.
He flips up his hand.
He flips up his hand.
And he's heard the whole conversation that you've had with the dealer asking about your hand.
So this is why seat position's a little relative. I'm in seat 8, he's in seat 2. So it's not like I'm whispering to the dealer, but also it's possible that there was some level of that he didn't hear the whole conversation while the dealer turned their head to me to speak to me.
Mm-hmm.
but it wasn't, and it's at the MGM, which if you've ever played in that room, it's kind of loud because there's people walking by, but I thought that the conversation was heard by him, yes.
Okay.
So I show my hand, he shows his hand,
Okay.
at which point I said, I haven't called yet.
Uh-huh.
And he's like, oh, I thought you had called when you showed your hand. I said, no. At
Right.
which point I say, hey, I'm folding, but I'll tip the dealer for you. At which point he says, hey, we're all good. And the table blows up at me as if I angled him. I know this isn't the exact same thing as the Hellmuth hand, but I was curious after watching the Hellmuth hand. One, do you think I did anything wrong? And two, what would have happened if the guy in the Hellmuth hand had showed Phil a better hand? Do you think
Well,
Phil should have done something differently then?
Well, that's the whole thing with the Hellmuth hand, which is similar to your spot here, where, obviously, I actually don't. I mean, I put out a video. I don't think that Phil angled, and most of the pros don't. I mean, he's just not known to do that. I think it was sort of a giant misunderstanding. Obviously, I don't think that he handled it well after the fact. This is exactly the same situation where you accidentally kind of get a free roll on this guy. Because if he turned over a worse hand, you can call, and if he turns over a better hand, you can fold. With that being said, if you are accurately conveying this story, I don't think that you've done anything wrong here, especially if it's allowed to turn over your hand. The whole thing with the Hellmuth thing was that he proposed this complex equity chop, and these guys probably haven't played much live poker. The stage that it was on, that's what made the whole thing really, really badly, poor. But I am all for making things right. Like if I think I'm in for against an amateur, like in your spot, but I don't feel like I would have done anything here.
Like you wouldn't have thrown him $50 or something?
No, I don't think so. And I don't object to doing that. I don't object to doing things like that, chopping the pot, in a certain situation. It's kind of weird because if he showed you a bluff, then you would call and win, right?
Right.
At that point, I don't know. I wouldn't chop the pot, but I'm trying to think if I would ever give anything back to the guy. But here you're losing, so you just fold. So he's winning the pot anyways. So It's kind of a little bit easier because, he's winning the pot anyways, as opposed to him losing, right? But I don't really think that you've done anything wrong here, especially if you explicitly ask the dealer.
Okay. And then it's fine just to tip the dealer and move on and not give any equity to the guy. Because I probably honestly would have called if he wouldn't have showed it, just because he had been doing so many different weird things.
I understand your concern. I'm looking in the live chat. People are saying, I don't approve of this. You mean approve of the way that the caller thought that he was going to give money back, I'm assuming people are saying. It is interesting because if you would have called, he would have got your money, but I just don't think that you've done anything wrong. And it makes it better, the fact that the guy's going to win the hand anyways, especially I don't understand why the table blew up at you like you were angling. Because again, you have to protect yourself in a cash game. People are allowed to turn over their hand unless the rules explicitly state that when somebody turns over their hand and the action's on them, their hand is dead. And I don't believe that is a rule anywhere. Now, somebody in the live chat said in the UK, if you do that, your hand is dead. Okay, well, that might be so. Then that rule. But here in the States, if the action's on me and somebody's all in, I can turn my hand over. It's not going to kill my hand. Even if there were rules about not doing it, I bet the penalty is just like a warning. It's never, I'm going to kill the hand. They were very, very, steadfast about killing hands, what constitutes killing hands. And you turning your hand over isn't really one of those things that would kill your hand. You know what I'm saying?
Yep, that makes sense. So if in the similar situation, if like the guy had showed Hellmuth ace queen and Hellmuth just mucked it, you think people would have been less unhappy with him than what he did with the equity chop? With not the equity chop, with taking the pot in the 5K?
I think that was just a perfect storm of everything bad happening for Hellmuth that highlighted the whole thing. I don't even think it would have been that big of a deal if they had run the board out and Hellmuth would have won. The reason why this was so highlighted is because Hellmuth would have lost. So if that was a scenario where the guy turned over ace queen and Hellmuth folded, I don't think it would have been that anywhere near as big of a deal as what ended up happening.
Makes sense.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, for sure.
Anyway, Steven, I appreciate the call. Thank you very much.
Yep, thank you.